Hey guys, this is a quick video where I want to show you my first two cartoon character watch acquisitions. I intend to make a small collection or build up a small collection. There are some cartoon characters that I've always been interested in since I was a child. I grew up in the 80s, so to me a lot of the Disney characters and Peanuts characters are dear to my heart. And in this case we've got both Mickey Mouse, which one of my very first watches that my mom got me when I was very little was a Mickey Mouse watch. It was a mechanical watch at the time. It wasn't automatic, so there was, I had to wind it every morning. And it was on a leather band, and I love that watch, but it probably died a horrible death because I wasn't very good to my belongings at the time. And my second watch is a Timex Marlin with the Snoopy Space Traveler character in it, which this is a watch that was released as part of the 50th anniversary of the lunar landing. So it is somewhat special. It's no moon watch or anything like that, but it is special because it was one of the many watches that were introduced during that time period last year in 2019. Anyways, I'm gonna go over the specs and some of the pros and cons of each one of these watches. I will also show you some of the box designs for each one of them, which is a little bit special compared to their regular counterparts. And hopefully I answer some of your questions if you're in the market for one of these watches. So stay tuned. First, I'll start with the Invicta watch. This particular watch is really based on the 8926 OB series of watches. There are some slight differences to it. The most obvious being that it's got Mickey Mouse in the dial. However, there are other differences that are not immediately obvious. One of them is some of the text on the dial is located towards the 9 o'clock part of the dial, whereas the traditional ones have it towards the 6 o'clock. And the Invicta logo is located immediately above the text on this one, whereas in the traditional ones, it's actually located at the top, just below the 12 o'clock marker. Another difference is that this watch is actually a charcoal watch. It's not black, so you may notice that a little bit of kind of a dark gray hue, and I will do a comparison with a similar watch that I have that is a traditional black one, so that you can see the difference in more detail. But it's a charcoal color. It's actually a lot better looking in person than it is through the camera. I was trying to make adjustments to make it look as good as it looks in person, but it looks a little dull and boring on camera. It actually looks really nice in person. The bezel itself looks very flat on camera, but in reality, with light shining from different angles, it has a little bit of a metallic sparkle to it. The bezel numerals are actually based on the 8926, not the 8926 OB. However, it wears the 8926 OB point edge bezel. So that's kind of a strange mix there. The 8926 OB has the more Rolex style bezel numerals, where it doesn't have the dots in the between the 20 and the 50. It's basically just kind of plain, and it's a little bit thinner as far as the font goes. And this one actually has the one from the I forget what the term is. I think it's like scalloped edge, but it's the 8926 non-OB. And that one, which I'll show you because I actually own one of those, contains the same exact font as this. It's just black. So real quick, as far as specs goes, this still remains, being in the 8926 series watches, it's water resistant to 200 meters. It is a screw-in crown, and the movement that it uses is a Seiko NH35, which has winding, hacking, and this specific model has a date on it with the Cyclops. So it's a really functional movement. I actually enjoy it. Very reliable. It's not the most accurate in terms of keeping time, and it's weird because I've noticed that movement is very and of course you can always regulate it yourself, but from the factory it appears to be very inconsistent between one watch and the next. And between this one and my other Invicta of the same series, This one I think is usually off by about 18 to 21 seconds per day, and that's sitting flat on a surface, like just facing up. And the other one is usually about, I've had it be as low as 4 seconds a day, which is pretty amazing for being something that hasn't been regulated by anybody. I bought it brand new. I haven't taken it to any watchmaker or anything like that. But it is a reliable movement, and it's functional enough. And I do like that it has built-in hacking, which helps with when I want to set the time as close as possible to the current time. Those are some of the quick specs on it. The bezel is unidirectional as far as the rotation goes. Rotates towards counterclockwise, which is a safety measure when scuba diving as far as the time you want. The other thing about this one is it has the controversial Invicta logo or lettering embossed on the case. Many people are not a fan of this, myself included. I enjoy these watches regardless. There's some people that will not even get over that. I give it, basically to me, I just kind of ignore it. But it is something that I think Invicta in the future should probably consider not doing anymore. But other than that, I mean, it's just a typical fare Invicta. It has the, I don't know if you can see it there. My apologies if you can't, but the crown has the kind of like that Swiss sort of design. Again, being part of the 8926 series, it does have, we'll remove the NATO strap for a moment. It does have the exhibition case back that shows off the Seiko movement, the NH35. Actually, NH35A, as it states there. It just adds to the sort of charm of the automatic watches, especially in a sea of quartz and all sorts of non-interesting watches. Anytime that you have an automatic watch, you kind of want to have as much as possible saying that it is an automatic without being too obnoxious. And I think that's a subtle thing. I mean, it's in the back of your wrist anyway. So let me do a quick comparison. I'm going to push it aside, just off frame here, or close to it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring into frame an 8926 non-OB. This is basically the same as the OB, but with the scallop edge instead of the coin edge. And this is black. So this is the more traditional color. And I know that Invicta makes this series watches in all sorts of colors. They make them in like this royal blue. They make them in, I believe, Pepsi color. They have a black with like some gold accents and things like that. But this is like gonna be your common standard fare, 8926. So other than the dial color, the lack of Mickey, and what else? And the edge of the bezel, they are basically identical. In fact, this watch actually came with the exact same band as this one did, which is, I don't know, some people criticize it. It's fine, it works okay. I got this one to adjust. It doesn't have quick adjust, but it does have the micro adjustments. So I was able to get this specific band adjusted to a fairly comfortable, put it back here, setting where even during the day, if I'm eating a little bit more salt than I should and my wrists get a little fatter, then I'm okay, I can still wear it. This one though, I very quickly moved it to NATO straps. Well, my thoughts on it are, this is one of those watches that if you're looking for a Mickey Mouse watch, and in particular you're partial towards automatics, you cannot go wrong. It's a 200-meter watch, so it is a diver watch. Some people will say, well, it's not really intended for extended diving or whatever, but the reality is most people are going to do recreational diving. If you have a PADI certification, you can't technically dive below 35 feet, I think it is, or something along those lines, or maybe 75. It's been a long time. However, you can use it for swimming just fine. Being a screw-down crown design, it's going to be okay. It's going to be safe. I don't think you're going to have any water intrusion. Just make sure that it is screwed down pretty good. Some people have complained about these watches, and not just the Mickey Mouse in particular, but just the series in general. They have complained that they have gotten some water intrusion when they take a shower, or when they go, jump in the pool. For the most part, unless you're actually a professional diver of any kind and you're going to be in the water or doing any sort of recreational diving that requires an actual normal watch instead of a dive computer, you want to keep this off the water. There's no real reason to use it. Most people will probably use it under normal everyday conditions, and when you jump in the shower, just take it off like any other piece of clothing. I do like the overall aesthetics of this watch. I mean, I wouldn't have bought it if I didn't. And its sibling here, I think it's a very good looking watch as well. I enjoy both the edge designs. I think this one is more, you know, traditional homage to the Submariner style, because you want to have that cone edge. And I'll tell you, it is a lot easier to rotate this bezel than it is to rotate the scallop design. So just for that alone, I think this actually has a bit of an edge over this one as far as functionality and usability goes. I wear them in like different occasions. This one is not really a daily watch for me. I wear it if we go to like a nice dinner or something like that. I don't know. It's an Invicta. It's not really a luxury watch, but it wears nice. It looks nice. This one looks more you know, everyday, sporty, that sort of thing. And people enjoy it when people see it in my wrist. They'll ask about it. They'll ask questions, and you know, it's cool that happens. I don't know if I'm remembering this incorrectly or not, but I think this one, the lume on it has more of a bluish hue than this one does. This one is the traditional green, and you can actually see even here, if you look at it. I mean, I know the lume is not actually engaged right now, but you can see that it's a little bit lighter colored as far as like the filling in the on the hands and in the dial markers. So that's kind of a interesting difference between the two. Maybe they did it because of the grayish kind of dial. It might look a little bit better. Who knows? But other than that, they're pretty identical in the way that they lume or illuminate and the way that they last, which is not very good. I'll be honest with you. These watches are not known for their lume. Their lume is pretty horrid. Let me see if I can do a little bit of, you know, showing you what this looks like. So I'm gonna shine a light on it for a little while, and then I'm gonna turn the light off. So stay tuned. All right, well, I'm back, and this is going to be a little bit grainy and difficult to see, but if you can notice, the lume is kind of on. Now, here's the surprising thing. I put them both over the same light source, and I try to do it as evenly as possible, but if you notice, the lume on the Mickey Mouse watch, which is the one that's moving at the moment, it's a little bit brighter than the other one. So I'm not sure if that's a product of the lume color differences, but I will tell you, it's actually green. I think I had just imagined it being blue for some reason, but they're both green. And you know, the difference in illumination might just be because I had it slightly off or whatever. So yeah, just assume that these are going to be very similar. So there's not going to be any fundamental difference between them. But yeah, that's basically it. And as you can see, it's not very good. I'm gonna be right back with a different watch that I have. It's a Citizen NY0040, which is an automatic from a European market. I actually purchased it off the Netherlands, and I'll show you the difference. I'm gonna leave it under the light for the same amount of time, and then I'm gonna place it here so you can see it. So stay tuned. All right, so I'm back with the Citizen watch, and as you can see, I left it under the light source for the exact same amount of time, and look at the difference. And not only that, but I mean, I'm gonna move the other ones into frame, and look, they almost completely lost their glow. I mean, if it was pitch black, I suppose you could see them, but even with the least amount of light in the environment, they're pretty much not looming anymore. So that's just to show you the difference between other companies' lume technology and that of Invicta. And I'll say, for all the things that Invicta is criticized, I think this one's the most valid. A lot of people complain about the watches being too gaudy and big and all that stuff, and I think Invicta makes a wide range of case designs to appease most people. And they do make some slightly strange decisions sometimes with some of the watch designs. But I'll say this one is the one that irks me the most because there's really no excuse. They are a Swiss watchmaker. They have access to information and you know, technology to be able to use proper lume. I mean, come on, just I guess outsource it to another company, do something about it, but definitely fix that issue. I think that Invicta watch collectors deserve a little bit better, and anything that calls itself a diver watch should always have some very good lume. So this is probably like 10-15 seconds worth of standing under a light, and as you can see, the lume on the hands is still extremely bright. And even though the one for the dial has kind of gone down a little bit, it's still very viewable. The ones in the hands will last almost through the night. I've done this before, and I'll wake up at 4 in the morning to use the restroom or whatever, and I can still see the hands. So very good lume. Now, I'm not really here to talk about this watch specifically. I just wanted to make a point that that is the one major item that I wish Invicta would do differently with their watches. So let's move on and back to the topic at hand. Right, so here's the Mickey Mouse again, and some final thoughts. Again, this is a watch that I wear quite often. I'd say probably at least once a week, which is often, you know, when you have 15 watches or something like that. So it's in my rotation quite often. It's robust. I know this watch is not gonna just, you know, break if I drop it or whatever. It'll last, and the thing is, it's relatively inexpensive. I picked this watch up for, I think it was just under $100, which is a little bit more expensive than the traditional 8926s, especially when you can find those sometimes on sale for less than $50, which happens from time to time on Amazon, and that's brand new, sold by Amazon. But this watch, you have to understand, there's some licensing fees and things or licensing overhead that Invicta has to deal with. So I'm okay with paying a little bit extra for it and for the exclusivity. Now, I'll say this one in particular, let me do something. I'm gonna remove the strap, because this watch does not adhere to the 8926 number convention. It uses a completely different number, which I think is like a 5-digit number, and it is limited, so it actually has a limited edition numbering on it. I think they made 3,000 of them. At the very least in this specific color, because they came in the traditional black, I believe. By the time I was aware that these watches existed, the black ones had already completely sold out, and I think there was another one. I can't remember if it was blue or some other color, but here goes. Now I'm talking without any watch to show for, but the model number for this watch, if I can find it. Here it is. It's 24610, and I don't think you're gonna be able to see that. Let me see this camera. So there's the number up there, 24610, and then limited edition. Mine is 2,884 out of 3,000 that were made. And again, I think that is specific to the charcoal gray. They might have made 3,000 of each one of them, or the different color variants. So it's possible that there might be 9,000 out there, or maybe even more than that, depending on how many color variants there were. It is kind of an exclusive watch in the 8926 family of watches, numbering scheme aside. And I think that it's this will be one of those watches that I'll probably keep, forever. If I ever get a wild hair up my rear end and I decide to start selling off watches, I think this might not be one that I'll probably part with. I just like it. I enjoy it. Simple. I'll probably be wearing this as often as I do these days for as long as I wear watches. Right, so moving on to the next timepiece. This is again a Timex Marlin Space Traveler Snoopy limited edition, and I will show you both this and the Invicta's boxes here in a little bit, and I'll do it in a kind of a combined section there. But this watch, I actually fell in love with this watch when I first saw it when it was announced. It was announced late last year, or it was like sometime like in late summer. And this specific watch has a couple of differences compared to the traditional Marlins. Very subtle. They're not extreme differences, but differences nonetheless. So the very first one, which is probably the most obvious of them all, is that this watch does not have a date on it, or a date complication. So it's basically it's just a plain dial with no date. It's just time. And the strange thing about it is that the movement that it uses has the date complication. Not only that, but you can actually, if you pull the crown to the date complication setting, you can rotate it and you can actually hear it turning the complication inside. So I'm not sure if they removed the rotating date bezel or whatever you call that piece, or if they just hid it under the dial. So one of the two obviously took place. I don't know which one. I'm not gonna open my watch to find out, because I actually do like this watch enough that I don't want to screw it up. quick confession, I actually do not know which is the actual reference number. There are a couple of numbers on the back of the case, and the website itself doesn't really show any reference numbers either. It basically just refers to it as, you know, as by the big long name, which is a traditional Timex thing. This one specifically is a Timex Marlin Automatic, and then they always have an X on there really big. Peanuts featuring Snoopy Space Traveler. I'm not sure. I take this with a grain of salt, but if this is the number here, that one over there, it's a very long number, and I honestly think that it's easier for you to search for it with by name. So ignore the number, it's too long, and it probably doesn't mean much. Ignore it for now. Just know that this is, it is a 50 meter water resistance. Cool, okay, that's confirmation right there. So, as you can see, this is an automatic movement watch as well. This one, though, uses a Myota, I think it's pronounced, which, I'll be honest with you, it is, you know, reliable, and that's kind of a thing you say for things that are not very remarkable. This is a very noisy movement, extremely noisy, and sometimes when the rotor starts going off, it makes you think that the watch just came apart inside, like the gears and everything else just decided to just take a dive. So just be warned, if you do go with any of the Marlin series watches, they do have a very noisy rotor, and that might be a deal breaker for some. It wasn't for me. I mean, I'll say it took some time to get used to, but once you get used to it, it's fine. But other than that, it is a very nice watch. Now, another difference compared to the regular or traditional Marlins, aside from the date missing, is that this has a completely black case, whereas most Marlins are either polished stainless or gold colored. So that's another noteworthy item. And then another cool thing about this one, the dial itself is white, and it is kind of a very subtly pearly white. Seems to have kind of a texture to it. But other than Timex, there is no text, so it doesn't say Marlin or automatic or anything like that. But also the second hand, as you can see, is red. And that to me was very important because I am one of those people that has a favorite color combination scheme, and mine is black and red. So immediately I went and searched for a matching NATO strap, and this one matches perfectly. So I'm gonna put it on and you'll see it again. Right, so we're back with the Timex Space Traveler Snoopy, and this watch was specifically released as a commemorative watch celebrating the 50th anniversary of the lunar landing, which is pretty awesome considering that the Timex Marlin was designed in the 1960s, which coincides with the decade that we made it to the moon, or at least most people believe we did. It's a very minimalistic design. This watch doesn't really have anything about it that just kind of screams, you know, fashion or anything like that. It's just very minimalistic. The hands have some lume in them. It's not the greatest lume in the world, but then again, you're not going to be diving with this watch or anything like that. I don't recommend that you use this watch even in a pool environment or anything like that. And it's not just because of the water resistance rating on it, it's also because this watch, unlike the Invicta, which has a mineral crystal, possesses a acrylic domed crystal on it. So it's doubly, you know, difficult to keep from getting scratched. I really like it. I think it adds to the aesthetics, and I really like how when you kind of look at it from the sides, things just sort of get distorted. It has that very 1960s-esque kind of look to it, especially like space related, which is funny because this is not specific to the Space Traveler Snoopy version, but it does kind of add to that and enhances the charm. But this being acrylic, it can scratch fairly easy actually. So you could always polish acrylic, but you know that's not something you want to do on a brand new watch, and it kind of you know, I don't know. I'm still on the honeymoon phase on this one, so I've been extremely careful with it. And so far as I know, I don't have any scratches on it. I clean it quite often. When I'm wearing it, I am overly aware of where my arm is at all times. So far I've been in luck, and I intend to keep it that way. I chose a native strap with black hardware, which complements the case, and as you can see, and I think this is the best way to go with this watch, and I'll tell you why. Because this watch comes from the factory with a leather strap, or sorry, not a strap, a leather band, I guess you can call it, and it is very stiff, extremely stiff, and it's supposed to wear after time and become more subtle, or supple. I just wasn't willing to give it a chance. As soon as I wore it the first day, I realized this is too uncomfortable, let me switch it over. And the second thing is that it just makes it look a little bit less prominent. The watch wears extremely small when you wear it with the leather band. When you wear it with a native strap, it looks the part. It actually looks like a 40 millimeter watch. And that's what I enjoy. Now, something you'll notice between this and I'll bring back the Mickey Mouse watch with just a case, is that although they're both 40 millimeter, this one will look chunkier, but this one does have a much larger dial, which is very nice. And that's just a product of this one having the rotating bezel on it. Most diver watches with rotating bezels, which most of them will have a smaller dial as a consequence. And also it's going to be a deeper watch. So as you can see, you know, there's a lot of metal there. And because of the way that it kind of slopes in at an angle, it just makes that dial that much smaller. I mean, if you compare the actual size, the diameter of the crystal to the dial, you'll lose 1 or 2 millimeters there as well. So you've got this one, which can actually use the entire real estate, not only because it doesn't have a rotating bezel, but also because of the design of the actual crystal itself. So if the crystal was just basically this top part here, and the case kind of followed that, then you would have to make a much smaller dial to be able to, you know, see it in there. But because this bezel is the way it is, or sorry, not the bezel, the crystal, you can have all this real estate, and I think it just makes this watch very, very nice to wear. Definitely, they were a little bit different to each other, even with the native straps on both. And you know, it's one of those things that depending on your mood, you're gonna go one way or another. I think I tend to wear this one when I'm doing things that require a little bit more, like the feeling of having something robust on your wrist. And then this one I tend to wear it more when I'm just, you know, everyday stuff. I wear it to work quite a bit. So this ones are almost in the same kind of rotation. So I'll probably wear this one about once a week as well. So, but anyways, let's move on to talking about some of the specs on this watch. All right, so this watch in particular is a 40 millimeter watch, as I explained, same as the Invicta. It is 50 meters water resistance rating, which is good enough for the rain, splashing in the pool, not necessarily going too deep with it, or extended pull time. And if you happen to be one of those strange people that does not take their watch off even when you take a shower, then it should be okay. But it is not a screw down crown, so you always have a risk of getting a little bit of water in there, especially if the crown is pulled out. It is slightly thinner as far as the case height goes. To be honest with you, I don't have the specs on this one right now, but they appear to be... I would imagine this one's probably close to 15 millimeters, and this one is 13. At least that's what the official specs call for. It uses a 20 millimeter strap, and that makes it easy to share straps with this guy and every other 40 millimeter watch out there that tends to use the same size for the straps, which is good. And it is a stainless steel case, again, because this one is finished in this kind of glossy black finish. It kind of looks plasticky a little bit. It looks a lot more attractive in person than it does in pictures and on camera in general, but you know, just be aware that it's going to have a little bit more of that kind of glossy piano plasticky kind of look to it. This finish does become a fingerprint magnet, so you'll probably be wiping and cleaning this quite often. Other than that, I mean, it is just a standard fare Marlin. Does not have a date complication on it, although the movement contains the mechanics, and I wouldn't be surprised if under the dial it still has the actual date rotator on there. The interesting thing is that there is another Peanuts variant of the Marlin, which is the Charlie Brown one. It shows Charlie Brown with a kite. That one has the date complication, so I think they really purposely wanted to make this watch as minimalistic as possible. So I don't think it was, you know, they're both priced at the same exact price, and obviously they're paying licensing fees for both I'm sure in the same probably contract or amount or whatever. So I don't think it has anything to do with cost or anything like that. It was simply the design. They wanted to make this watch as minimalistic as possible. To me, it has that 60s contemporary to modern kind of vibe to it. So if you were in the 60s and you saw this watch, you would actually think it was a modern looking watch. So I like that about it. One more thing. So because this is a Miota movement, it's also Japanese, just like the Seiko NH35A that's in the Invicta. But unlike that one, this one only has wind. It does not have a hacking function. There is kind of a way that I found that you can sort of hack it when the power reserve is very low, but I would imagine that could probably cause issues with the movement itself, so I wouldn't recommend necessarily doing it. But if you kind of sort of wind back a little bit, just enough, it will stop moving the second hand, and then you can set the time. That's a way to kind of hack it, but it does not have actual hacking per se. Right, so onto the boxes now, and I will move the watch slightly off camera here. My setup is a little bit strange, so I do apologize for not having the ability to fit this completely in a frame, but this is the Invicta watch box, and as you can see, it is very Mickey Mouse themed. Has the Disney logo there, and then the front of it does display the limited edition, and this is kind of silverish finish. Other than that, it's just completely black. It does have a kind of a texture to it, almost leathery like. And on the inside, boop, it does come with a very nice pillow. It has like a kind of a faux leather, and I have the original band that it came with, the steel band, which is exactly the same one that is currently in the other Invicta 8926 series watch. It includes the cleaning cloth. Let me see if I can take this out. And then there's just the Invicta badging, all that stuff, and the silica gel. Those are the two log adapters for the bands. So that's pretty much it. I took all that off. It doesn't come disassembled, and you have to put it together. So don't worry about it. If you were to get this watch, you don't have to spend time putting it together. Oh yeah, this little nice touch. It has the Invicta writing. Moving on, we have the Timex box for the Marlin, and this box is actually quite long, as you can see. The watch comes essentially completely just spread out, and it is kind of a leathery feeling box, but I don't think it is leather. It has a texture to it, and it's kind of nice and cushiony, so it is a very nice heavy box, and the watch isn't even in here right now, and it's quite heavy. So it's kind of a black on black sort of theme, and I really enjoy it. It goes with the case, the actual case design of the watch itself, so it gives it kind of a mysterious look. And then on the inside, there is something very interesting. So this is the leather band that it came with. As you can see, it's quite wrinkled, and I only wore this once, but it has a black stitching on it. I think some of the original pictures that Timex had during when they were advertising it showed a white stitching on it, but it really is black. And I've confirmed that with some of the reviews that I've read, where people were somehow kind of complaining that it was black instead of white. I don't know why. It actually looks nice, I think. But this is the other kind of nice touch about this box, and I'll have to basically show this kind of in pieces. But as you can see, it has this artwork embedded, and this is kind of a waxy insert, if you will. And I'll leave it here for a second so you can... Oh, wow, so we just almost lost power. Interesting. Well, there you go. Anything's possible when recording a YouTube video. Again, I will leave this here for a few seconds. Snoopy Space Traveler. Our love for Snoopy and our curiosity for space. Some things are just automatic. Well, obviously that's a pun on the automatic watch movement. Along with NASA and Peanuts, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the lunar landing with our iconic 1960s Marlin design and 21 jewel automatic movement. So they're pretty proud about that, even though it's just a cheap Miota movement. Nothing wrong with it. It's just, it's not that remarkable. But there you go, Timex Marlin automatic, and then it's got this little cartoon here, little strip. I'll kind of move it here. Let me see if I can center it. So there you go. I'm on the moon. I did it. I'm the first Beagle on the moon. Yes, you are, Snoopy. Good job. Good boy. So one last thing that I wanted to mention, the boxes are not in frame right now, but I will tell you that they do both come inside outer boxes that are actually equally nice. Both of them are black, and no point in showing you them, but it's actually a nice touch from both companies to always include their boxes for limited edition watches inside another box. It's kind of a way of you know, appreciating the fact that collectors want to keep the boxes as neat as possible. So that was a cool touch from both of them. So anyways, some concluding statements here. Both of these watches again fill a very similar part of the of a niche market for cartoon character watches. These are some of my favorite right here. In fact, I think both of these are my favorite in terms of cartoons goes, from, you know, the all the heydays of cartoons. But in general, they're not extremely remarkable watches in their own right. If you were to get just the Marlin without Snoopy on it, or just the Invicta 8926 series without Mickey Mouse on it, they're pretty common watches. The Marlin comes in, I think retails about $250. The Invicta non-cartoon characters come in at around, I want to say it's probably about $100 retail, like $99, and you can find them all day long for about $78, and a lot of times they go on sale for less than $50. So would I recommend one over the other? Well, that's kind of a tough one, because this watches, I didn't purchase them, you know, because I wanted a, you know, like one watch that was better than the other or anything like that. They both are watches that I have fun with. You know, I wear them about the same amount of time throughout the week each. And even though they have different pricing schemes to them, to me they are both kind of in the same category. However, if you're on a budget, this is a kind of a no-brainer. Try and go for the Invicta. Now, unfortunately, because they were limited editions, most of the authorized retailers have completely, or authorized dealers, I should say, have completely run out of stock. So if you find one brand new, it's probably going to be from a third-party non-authorized dealer, which means you'll probably pay a little bit more than you would have when they were available, which is, in my opinion, might not make it worth it, especially if they're asking for anything ridiculous like $200 or something like that. That's not, you don't want to pay $200 for that watch unless you're that into Mickey Mouse watches. The Timex one, however, I haven't seen this being sold on any other online retailers like Amazon or anything like that. You can find the Marlin, but you cannot find the this specific one. And I think that's probably going to remain the case. I don't think that Timex has any intentions of selling this specific limited edition outside of their you know, first party store, which is on their website. Now, is it worth $250? Well, here's the thing. I didn't pay $250. I actually happened to have a coupon code when I purchased it, and I think I paid like $210. I want to say it was like $207 or $210 or something like that. And you know, to me it is. You might have a difference of opinion, and that's okay. If you have no issues paying $200 for an automatic Marlin Timex Snoopy watch, then, you know, by all means, I would highly recommend this one. Now, if you're just looking for a watch and this one just happens to catch your eye, but you're not really into Snoopy, there's really no point in spending the money for it. You can probably find a regular Marlin somewhere for a lot cheaper than $200, and I would recommend going that route. Now, I don't know why Timex is placing these watches in this price range. I honestly think that with the Miota movement, they could do a lot better. I hope that they begin to, now that they're getting a little bit more aggressive with their reissues, that they reconsider their pricing schemes, and they start releasing these models, the 40mm Marlins, in the sub $200 range. They are really good watches. They feel good. They feel solid. But you know, let's be honest, it's not a high-end watch by any means, and it's not even a mid-range watch by any means. You know, we're not talking about this being you know, an Orient or something like that. So if you can find it for less than $200, you know, go for it. If you find it for retail and you're really into Snoopy and you really want to collect it, go for it. That's what I did. If you're just looking for a Marlin watch and you don't care what the dial looks like, you know, look elsewhere. Look for a third-party seller. Look for it for you know, a better price or used. So anyways, both of these watches would make anybody happy that is looking for character watches, and they are both very great at being daily watches, and they're both robust in their own right. Just keep in mind that with that acrylic crystal on the Marlin, you will always be, you know, a little nervous to wear the watch, and in my case, I'm constantly aware of where my wrist is. If anything, that's kind of a good thing because I don't hurt myself either. But just be aware of that. So both of the watches are excellent in the way that they're fun and they make you feel about them. So yeah, if you're in the market, go find one, get it, enjoy it. Anyways, that's all I've got for today. So thanks for watching.